Thank you and welcome to Plato's Cave on WZZR, coming to you from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio, home to fresh ideas, freshly cooked, and filleted for you. Idea fricassee, delicious. Chat room is good too. Go in the chat. I'm not there now, but I will be there soon, momentarily. In fact, as we speak, I am entering
Hi,
the
mate.
chat.
Hey, Lavender Stream. Hey, Flea.
There
Flippy
we are.
Troll.
In we go. Important, though, to understand that this is listener-funded radio, which means that there is no corporate or otherwise sponsorship. Please do donate if you can. Any kind of currency is good. Even crypto if you have it. That's a bit of a roller coaster, though. And maybe you can't. You can't donate. That's okay too, because oh man, things are getting tougher every single day, and I'm sort of hating myself for having done something which I thought I wouldn't do, but had to because economics. I'll tell you about that in a second. Now, if you can't donate, tell people about the station. Tell them. Let them know. And hopefully one of those good folk can donate. I think we're on a 30-second delay, Flea. You should be hearing us any moment. Today is the 18th of April, 2024. Completely arbitrary year and date. You can catch the cave on the air, on the line, all the time. I love saying that. I don't know why. And onto your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere. Or listen at home on a various tablet digital radio. Maybe even anywhen.
Oh, anywhen, yes.
Anywhen. That's a bit spooky. But you know what? Archives are free. Another good reason to donate if you can. Archives are free. Go in there, Binging is the thing these days, I'm hearing. So just binge away. Binge. Long gone are the times when we had to vote, had to wait rather for shows to appear on a weekly basis. Now the whole season is downloaded or into your whatever streaming service you have, uploaded, whatever you want to call it. And you just watch it. Watch away. Now, before we start broadcasting at you in anger, which we will momentarily, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which we broadcast. And for Dave,
it's the Tarkanchan.
Thank you, sir. And for myself, of course, the good Darak people, which have a huge chunk of land here in Sydney. Massive. Really, it's true. And we would like to pay our respects to elders, past, present, and future. Thank you very much. Of course, that doesn't stop them from dying in custody. They're having accidents in custody. It's been 20-something years, maybe longer, since the Royal Inquest, I think it was, or the Coronial Inquiry or something. I think it was the Royal Commission, Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody. It's gotten worse. If anything, it's gotten worse. Okay?
Well, it's not going to get better.
It's not going to get better. But you know what? And in fact, look, I do have to put a warning here. We may be talking about people that are deceased. There we know, obviously, no images, but there we'll be talking about people that have passed on. That's just a word of warning for our First Nations people. But look, I don't want to bring down the mood, but this has bothered me all day. How and why does a 10-year-old boy commit suicide? Seriously, I don't get it. I don't get it. And here we are in the supposedly first world nation. I don't even know what that means anymore. I look at Israel, another supposed first world nation. America, first world. First world, under what kind of definition? What is first world? Because we make the most garbage. We make the most pollution. We are the biggest wasters on the planet. Are those the criteria? Is this what this is what we need to do? I don't know. You tell me. I don't know. I'm really sometimes you just can't. You can't talk about it, and you go, "My goodness! I mean, what is going on there? What happened?" I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I am at a loss, and yeah, it's insanity. As far as I'm concerned, this is complete insanity having a 10-year-old boy. And I think he was in custody, if you want to call it that, or some kind of juvenile detention or whatever. I mean, he's 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
How does that happen? We had nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. We did nothing. Okay, and he was under Western Australia. He was under Western Australian care at 10.
Mm-hmm. Look, don't get me wrong. I'm not a real critic. Not critiquing it. I'm not a real critic though of the country itself, but management of the country for those who. I think there must be. I'm going to say it another way. I think there must be different levels of what people call humanity, because if we were all the same, I'm sure all striving from the same origin, I'm sure it would still happen. I think the failure here is that there is a distinction and people aren't treated the same way, because we know that the profile of who's incarcerated is greatly leaning towards, the non-white community. It concerns me that we don't have a level standing of everything in our society.
See,
that's, I think, I've got to be careful, Mackie, how I say it.
No, look, the truth is this, right? Racism is an undercurrent anywhere you go. I've experienced it firsthand all my life. Racism has never been very far from my thoughts, being on the receiving end of it mostly. in fact, pretty much exclusively. But this is different. This is institutionalized destruction of a people, and it's not just in Australia. I mean, everybody was wagging their finger at South Africa, right, during apartheid. Ooh,
that's right.
Look at that. That's terrible. How could they? That was at the same time when in the South, in the United States, there were still separate water fountains for African Americans and white Americans. Okay, they were there. I mean, the apartheid wasn't, for the most part, wasn't written into the country's law. It was written into the local law. It was written into the local traditions and customs, absolutely, in America. But it wasn't an explicit system as it was in South Africa. Sure enough. But it was just as real. The apartheid was just as real as it was in South Africa. In Australia, you can't even call it apartheid. It was a targeted decimation of an indigenous people. And this is the problem with indigenous people all over the world where colonization took place. I got to be very specific here. Wherever colonization took place, or slavery, and slavery is colorblind, by the way, and it has led to these kinds of issues. It's the same with the First Nations people in the United States and Canada. It's the same. I don't know if you remember this, but recently there was this, I think this was Canada, where the Catholic Church, they had unearthed these graves. I think it was hundreds, if not more, of children that had been buried at this Catholic, I think it was Catholic, not that it matters, missionary station or some such.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And so it's not an Australian, it's a colonial problem. It's a colonial, and dare I say it, not just European problem, but during colonialism, the problem exacerbated. So slavery is its own time. We've always had slaves, always. There hasn't been a time in history that we can point to and say, no slaves. Don't think that actually happened ever. Okay. What was different, though, that slightly advanced nations were going out to slightly less advanced nations. And in some cases, not even to slightly less advanced nations, but to nations that were more advanced.
Uh-huh.
Just not as conquest-minded, I guess, especially in the Americas, and especially in South America. We wiped out, we know this now because we have the evidence. Everybody thought, when the Spanish were there first, the Portuguese, and then the Italians and whatnot in South America, everybody thought, the stories of these cities are a fantasy. It's a fever dream. And none of them are real, can't be real, it's impossible, it's all just jungle. And true enough, by the time they actually looked into the jungle, by the time they felt safe enough to make it through, it had all been overgrown, they were all dead. But we know now that there were massive cities, bigger than the cities in Europe, with more ingenious agricultural and irrigation systems.
That's right.
Home to millions of people. In fact, most of the Amazon basin, we now think,
was populated.
Was populated, but not only that, it was agriculturally and I guess aesthetically cultivated. It was a garden, essentially. Totally. It was a garden.
Yep.
And we have the evidence now. We know these population has existed. We've seen the irrigation system. We've seen the soil. The black soil we've talked about? That's real. And we still don't know how they made that, right? But they just disappeared. They died, smallpox, maybe typhoid, maybe, who knows, right? The germs, because we had been separated for such a long time that, these isolated population groups hadn't really gotten in contact with anyone who carried these germs, especially en masse. I mean, if you run into one or two people, it doesn't really matter. One or two people that might carry a virus, it's chances are
blankets.
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we're still giving blankets to the people here in Australia, the First Nations people. We're still giving them blankets. We destroyed.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, metaphorically, we destroyed their way of life for the most part. We took away their identity. Of course, what happens is that what do? You escape. You try to escape when you lost all hope and when you have no more places to turn. When you see your world burning all around you. Your children are being taken away, right? You're being hunted like animals. You turn to drugs, alcohol, whatever, right? And that's happened pretty much to a whole bunch of indigenous people all around the world. That's a fact.
Yeah,
that's a fact. You can stand on your head and deny it. It's a fact. And for the Aboriginals here, for the First Nation people here in Australia, it was specifically bad. And I'll tell you why. The concept of land ownership wasn't something that the First Nations people here subscribed to. Yes, they lived in a certain area, but nobody would point to a piece of dirt and say, this is my dirt. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't quite like that. There was a spiritual connection to the land. There was a deep connection that goes back, many generations where you feel part of it. Because you are part of it. And that's how you live, and that's how you survive, right? Because here in the West, we're not part of it. We're better than that. We just survive because we're better. Everything else is just subordinate to us. But look at how well we're doing there. Wonderful. We'll talk about that in a second, Dave. Yeah, we're going to talk about this crazy thing in Dubai. But we took that away. We built fences. Same thing in North America as well. Fences? What? What? What do you mean this is your land? What? So when you take it with you when you die, you see, it's a really interesting conundrum to speak even the same language, but not understand the meaning of the words. So some people, in my recent experience as well, I'm going to say a lot of words. They say many, many words, but there's no content. I think Goethe said, not even Shakespeare, nothing but sound and fury, right? Words are just sound and smoke, echo, nothing meaningful. It's just noise, right? And we assign meaning, and then we say, God, this land is mine. Okay, I don't understand that concept. If you don't have a concept of ownership, you can say it all day long. It doesn't change the fact that the person you're talking to doesn't understand what you're talking about. This is my land now. Go, I will shoot you. They'll understand that you will shoot them, but they still don't understand why. Why do you want to shoot me? What?
Because
and why do you kill all my buffalo?
Becky.
Well, that's the thing, right? And it's a really critical difference, which has led to, unfortunately, the demise of many indigenous people, right, in the world, where it was just a complete lack of understanding. What do these guys want? What do they want? What? You know, well, the British wanted a prison colony is really what they wanted, but ultimately, we are now looking at the fruits of those early conflicts and the early conquests, right? And even under the law that existed then, 300, 400, 500 years ago, these annexations of land were unlawful. You could only claim that land under the crown and under God if it was not occupied by anyone. Terra nullius. Terra nullius means there's no one there, so you can take it. I mean, if you conquer it, you fight someone, that's fine, right? They couldn't do the same thing in New Zealand. New Zealand was not terra nullius because the Maoris were fighting hard. They were fighting hard. South Africa, okay? The Zulus, they were fighting the British hard. And then
the Aboriginals.
And the Boers, yes, but not hard enough, right? That's the thing. Whereas, see, in New Zealand, they fought them to a standstill and they had to have a treaty. In Australia, they were just overwhelmed.
Well, two things. Number one, that some of the biggest massacres in the world of Native people happened here. Yes. The next thing was they weren't considered humans.
Exactly.
Fauna.
That is. I mean, Dave and I have spoken about this before. At the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, there are still people held in zoos. People, mind you. Not primates, not animals. People were held in zoos for the amusement of European audiences, etc., etc. So, I mean that's the reality of it. But look, I don't know. We've done pretty badly overall. Okay, and again, slavery is not a new thing. What we're doing now, though, is we're dealing with the fallout of the last 300 years of colonization. And the conflict in Rwanda, where almost 1 million people lost their life in the space of 6 weeks, that was also the fruit of colonization. The violence in the Congo, colonization. The violence pretty much all over Africa and all over South America and parts of Asia, a lot of that is colonization. And you know what? The conflict in the Middle East is born directly out of the last scraps and vestiges of colonization we in the West attempted, which was to colonize the Middle East. Right? We broke up the Ottoman Empire after World War I. That's what we did. Fair enough, off you go. And then we arbitrarily, and when I say we, it was really the French and the British mostly, arbitrarily drew borders and say, this is now this land, and this is this land, and this is this land. Yes, there were provinces by those names, not really with strict borders per se, and now all of a sudden they're countries. And then, worse yet, a few decades later, there were independent nations. I give you a simple example, Lebanon. Now, Lebanon is centered around Mount Lebanon. And around Mount Lebanon lived the Maronites. The Maronites are, a Orthodox Christian, well, not really Orthodox, maybe more closely linked to Catholics. But the point is, a Christian people, and they lived there, they had settled there, I think. Might have been sometime during the Crusades, doesn't really matter, maybe before. But that was around Mount Lebanon, right? And around and outside of that were Muslim Arabs. So you have the Christian Arabs around Mount Lebanon, and then in the surrounding land you've got Muslim Arabs, and There's not much conflict between those two people. Not really, right? But along come the French and the British and say, this is now all called Lebanon. So there's a big chunk of land called Lebanon, in which all of a sudden the Christian Lebanese find themselves in a minority, massively outnumbered. But also the wealthy minority, the landowners, the educated elite, etc., etc. In fact, the people favored by the colonial or protectorate powers, they're called protectorates, you see, Dave? They need protecting.
From what? From us?
Yeah, exactly. From the evils. From the evils. Down with the evils. And of course, what it leads them to strive, because the larger chunk of the population, which happened to be Lebanese Muslim at this point, felt a little bit hard done by, because they didn't, I guess, have all the same economic means, etc., as the Christian Lebanese did. And there's some other factions in there, and it gets really complicated. Then Israel comes along, oh my God, which really put a cat among the pigeons. But the point is, these conflicts, they're our fault. Completely, 100%, without a doubt, our fault. India and Pakistan, in fact, India itself, any conflict you find in there, our fault. Why? Well, the British went in. There's no such place as India. Most countries are figments of someone's imagination. There are very few countries that actually you would call a nation. Right? I'd argue probably France is a nation. I'd argue United States of America is a nation, maybe even Canada. But even Germany is not a nation. And let me explain what I mean by that. Nations form naturally and have like this I guess, mythology around its origin and creation and just its birth, right? And the French can trace it back. And the Germans were never like that. The Germans were always divided into scores of countries. You go from Hamburg to Munich and you cross 30 borders with different currencies, different weights, similar languages, very strong dialects though, right? And even to this day, when I was a child, if you watched a production from Hamburg, for example, or production from Munich, and I'm from Cologne, right? Like a theater production, it's televised. They will put subtitles. This is Germany. This is Germany. Okay? They would put subtitles on the screen so you could follow it, because that's how strong those dialects are.
Oh wow!
It's like, what? You think Irish English is bad? I got news for you.
Are people from Cornwall?
Oh, that's easy stuff. But
rookie.
The rookie, that was rookie numbers. But the thing is this: these nations didn't come together naturally; they were forced together. So Bismarck started it somewhat. See, Charlemagne, he created what was called the Greater Franken Empire, and that was really France and Germany, what is now called France and Germany. Those were the two chunks of country split up after his death, etc., etc. It was Bismarck who united Germany, more or less, and then Hitler himself saw himself uniting it even more and bringing it together, and he saw himself in a direct line of Charlemagne, Bismarck, and then him. But he created this myth, this mythos, because it didn't exist. This idea of the blood and the earth that connects the German people to the ground. The blood connects you to the ground, and blah blah blah, all that. Because it didn't exist as a nation. Japan is the same. It took a lot of doing to create like these national identities, and India didn't have it. China still, actually, China has it now. But it took a lot of doing for China as well to get there. But India is completely divided internally, right? Not just along religious or caste lines, but ethnic, language. It's crazy. But the British brought it together, right? Under their rule, India united. So that's where we are. And then of course Pakistan split off. For obvious reasons, that didn't really solve any problems either, because there's still more Muslims in India than in Pakistan, believe it or not. But it is a really fraught kind of thing to play with, and all of a sudden here we are trying to create nations out of nothing, right? No, well, it's all mythology. It's a myth. It's made up. It doesn't exist. Okay, it's Fugazi. Fugazi. It's not real. People spent a lot of time and effort to create these national mythic stories. Not real. And here in Australia, of course, it's. I mean, now this is the irony, Dave. This is what really gets me.
Mm-hmm.
Now we say, this is the oldest living culture on the planet, 60,000 years. Oldest living culture. Wow, look at that. And everybody wants to be part Aboriginal now. Everybody. Oh yeah, I'm part. Oh yeah. No, you're not. But we're claiming it now. Why? Because we're woke. You see,
it's trendy.
We're woke. We see the beauty of it. Let me tell you something. We don't, because nothing has gotten better for the First Nations people. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Zero. Voice to Parliament. Okay. Deaths in custody still spiraling out of control. Completely out of control. The conditions in which First Nations people live in some areas is shocking. It's the only word I can think of. And then yet here we are. It persists, right? It is a clash of cultures. And I know you like this one, Dave. You know why people, I think, didn't want to disclose that there might be alien life out there back in the 40s and 50s, or even earlier? Because we would be the First Nations people.
That's correct.
I mean, let's say the Anunnaki are real. Let's just, humor me. Humor me. And they got here, according to legend, hundreds of thousands of years ago. So they say. And they lived for a very long time. And their lifespan was massively longer than ours. Now, having said that, our lifespan is artificially cut short, but we've already talked about that. And then here we are. So let's say, they went somewhere, clearly something happened, there was a cataclysm, we talked about that, etc., etc. But let's say they come back. Now, they were able to traverse space or dimensions or time or whatever, wherever they came from, hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think they can do now? Right? Let's just be very clear here. Even in the state they were in then, they are still superior to us now. Okay? Again, humor me, according to legend, they managed to genetically splice, engineer, whatever you want to call it, the human race into existence, according to their legends. Okay? That's something we can't do yet. Or at least not to the level of sophistication, right? We can't. I mean, we're trying. Don't get me wrong. There's, the chimpanzee. Okay?
That's a lame example, but I appreciate it. Becky, what about what Lloyd Pye said about the cheetah being a roughly put together cat-dog mix?
And they're all clones of each other.
They all have the same DNA. That's right.
There's no genetic variance within the cheetah species. None.
Mm-hmm.
What? Oh, there was a bottleneck. No. I'm sorry. I mean, I might have
Human
stepped through most of them.
That's right.
Yeah. No, look, I'm familiar with Mendel's laws. Okay. And the thing is this: at some point, even if there's a bottleneck, okay, through mutation, genetic variation will sneak in there. It'll sneak in again. Right? You don't stay a clone for thousands and thousands of years after the bottleneck event.
Unless you put an error check in that aborts the fetus when there is a difference, and that's what happens.
Right, exactly. And then we see these gods, not just, but the Anunnaki, but others too, hold these cheetahs and lions in their arm, cradle them like a cat.
That's right, like a cat. And yeah.
Now, if it's a cheetah, you could argue, oh, that's a cat. Okay. But they also cradle lions. Now, only a fully grown male lion has a mane.
Mm-hmm.
There's no mane on a cub. There's no mane on any cat species that I know.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
But I'm happy to be wrong. And so, but the size difference is such that these gods, let's call them that, right, were so big that they would hold these massive cats, like little little, pets. And similarly, humans are portrayed as little 5, 6, 7-year-old children, coming just above the knee and maybe to the hip.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So, and again, we say, that that's not, giants and all that. It's not possible. But let me put it this way. And I know I might have said this before. I mean, we're all over the shop tonight, I guess. But sharks, I'll give you 2 examples. One is a shark, and one is a crocodile.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, if you look at sharks, there's certain. I mean, a great white shark, that's a pretty big shark. That's a big shark, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're also very small sharks, but they're all sharks. And then there was this massive shark, a megalodon. I mean, it was huge.
Yeah.
Okay, megamouth.
We're going to need a bigger boat.
I mean, yeah, we need a bigger. Send more, Pete, send more. No, but so it was a massive, massive shark. It was still a shark, though. And the size didn't stop it from being a shark. It didn't make its, it didn't collapse in on itself because the bones or cartilage wouldn't hold its mass or whatever.
That's right.
The inverse square law and all that about bone structure and whatnot. Well, if your bones are structurally different, then maybe it'll work. I mean, who knows? Maybe gravity where you came from is different, right? Who knows? But the point is, same with crocodiles. So crocodiles come in all kinds of sizes. We're all familiar with the salt crocs. They're pretty big. I mean, those are some big animals.
Like
but they used to be crocodile.
Salty, that's right.
Yes. But they're also smaller
there
species of, there's alligators and caimans. But back in the day, right, they had these massive crocodiles. I mean, you might as well call them land dragons. Or think about all the megafauna that went extinct at the end of the Younger Dryas. All the megafauna. And I'm not talking about the mammoth. I'm talking about the giant sloth. I'm talking about the giant kangaroo. I'm talking about, anything giant, really. They're all giant. They're all massive. Except people.
Well, those crocodiles, Mick, could easily have taken one of those large creatures. That's right. From the era.
We are happy to accept the megafauna. We're happy to say, that happened. There's no inverse square law with bone structure that makes it fall in on itself, right? That doesn't seem to exist there. But humans, no. But we have the legends.
No, you can't do that.
and according to some reports, admittedly from the 19th century, from newspapers, etc., especially around excavations of the mounds, also
and
excavations
museums.
In mines, they were taken away. Those bones of giants that were
the
found.
museum,
And again, but the legends are consistent. These were red-haired giants.
That's right.
Which were also cannibals.
Yep.
And by cannibals meant that they might not have eaten each other, but they
probably ate
other
us. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, right? So let's be very clear here. There is a knowledge filter that is applied to almost everything we know, and sometimes it's a conscious knowledge filter, like the example we gave you last time about the I'm not going to say pyramid, the structure in Indonesia.
Yes,
that is very, very old,
right?
And it was clearly let's say man-made. Okay,
it was made.
It's very, very old. It doesn't fit. But the article, and I posted this into the chat somewhere, but the article was withdrawn by the magazine, not because there was good counter evidence, but there was just too much grief that the magazine wanted to avoid. I guess it's just too much. Just pull it.
Oh, they're doing a Larry Silverstein. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, that's it. So this knowledge field that's being applied. So there's a lot of stuff we're just not told. And if you are told, it's tongue in cheek or with a smirk or with a raised eyebrow. Yeah, that's good morning. Look at Mackie. Isn't that cute? And all of a sudden, you're on the ledge. You're one of those guys. Ooh, can't really talk to him. He's a bit crazy. And that's okay though. That's okay. There are a lot of people in our position, in your position as a listener here, I guess, have said, as soon as I find myself in agreement with the majority, I have to check myself. I got to look up who said that, but it might have been Mark Twain. I'm probably wrong though. Whenever I find myself in agreement with the majority, I've got to go checked myself. Did I really? Am I really? No, I don't think I'm that guy. Right? Because the vast majority of people, they just don't care. They will care if they have been lied to blatantly, and they will care if it affects their life. I can tell you right now, Dave, and you know this, and Dave and I have been saying this too, these lies are materially affecting our lives. Why? Because we should be living in a post-scarcity utopia. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not being crazy or tinfoil hatty or anything like that. We should be living in a post-scarcity, Star Trek-like utopia. That's where we should be.
But hang on, Mackie, how can you do that when there's so much greed? Oh, did I say that out loud?
Oh, dude, what can I say? Sorry, I've been talking to myself silly here, man.
No, but
what did you think?
Isn't that right? Isn't that right? Really, from what we've been discussing, is the only reason why we don't have this, post-industrialization utopian society is just pure greed. No one wants to give things away for free.
No.
Businesses could easily live happily with a meager profit and solving the world's problems, but they don't. It honestly is. It's just a strive for more money and an ever increasing moat for those at the front line compared to those at the top. I'm not a communist, even though my dad would say so, because he's so far right. It makes me look like in the center, as though I'm a complete communist. I'm so far away. He needs the James Webb telescope to see me. That I appear so far away from his position. But fair call. I'll take it. Because when I watch extreme right media now, they're saying the things that we were saying 12 years ago. How did that happen?
Exactly right. What? I'm not that guy.
That's right. But this was really weird. Mackie and I commented about this, and it was kind of around the COVID era. Suddenly, click your fingers, boing, suddenly it's morning, and the entire world shifted towards the left, though we stayed stationary. So the right came closer to us. Hang on a minute. Like that close? Oh, I'm getting a little uncomfortable. Thank you, Zuckerberg. A little uncomfortable in that VR environment where I have that thing over my mouth where I scream for help in my lounge room while I'm watching VR, and no one in my lounge room can hear me. Because Zuck's breathing on my neck in this VR. It's a comedy piece. This is the problem that I'm seeing, Mackie. Is it different from your point of view?
No, but the thing is this: as more things are known in the world, like people are starting to realize, okay, it doesn't really matter what your political coloring is.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if you sit on the left, the right, the middle, the up, the down, the strange, the charmed. Doesn't matter, right? Because the truth is truth, and you just incorporate it into your narrative. So what we've been saying has been pretty much without any coloring. We're just telling you this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
We don't think it's good, but we're not saying it's this person's fault or this group of people, except I blame billionaires, of course, for everything, and the parasites. So, but it's not a specific ethnicity that I'm blaming, or religion for that matter. It's just great and naked ambition and complete inhumanity. That's what I'm blaming. And the parasites. But if you're, let's say, an extreme right-wing person, for argument's sake, right? And you can't really deny that these things are actually, you look at, I don't want to say the words because I don't want this to be taken off the platform. But, you look at certain content we discussed, and it's just true. And it just happens that some of that content can be incorporated into the narrative for these extreme groups because it suits their purposes. I'll give you an example. David Icke, right? And I've been following David Icke for many years. I've bought all his books, so I've seen pretty much most of his documentaries. Never been able to speak to him, unfortunately. But he
Lizard people.
well, that's it. Thank you, Hecklefish.
Hagglefish. That's it. Yahtzee.
Hopefully they won't sue us. No, but
It's
they
okay. We're paying
he,
homage to their show.
he was part of Ron Johnson's book called Them Living with Extremists. So he spent some time with David Icke. He also spent some time with a whole bunch of people. So if you haven't read the book, I really recommend it very highly. It's a really, really good book. And he talks about reptilian shapeshifters from the lower fourth dimension a lot. He says they're among us. He says the royals are those. Of course, they have got superior technology that can mask their true appearance, holographic technology, mind control, similar to what you would have seen in They Live, the movie, for example. But a lot of right-wing groups have attached themselves to him. And the question is why? Well, the answer is this. To them, when he talks about reptilians, they say he means Jews.
That's right.
Okay? So that's why he's been denied entry to certain countries, why events have been cancelled. But I can assure you, all right, and I've read all his material, I've seen all his documentaries, and then, like I said, this book where the reporter lived with him for some time, and he came to the same conclusion. He said then when David Icke says shape-shifting reptilians from the lower fourth dimension, he means shape-shifting reptilians from the lower fourth dimension. It's not code for Jew.
No, that's right.
Whereas people in his entourage, of course, say, oh, yeah, it's code for Jew. No, it's not. Or any other ethnic group for that matter. He is very serious in saying, no, you guys don't get it. This is how he actually says this. That's how they divide and conquer. They pitch us against each other. That's what happens.
And when you put us through that machine of pitching us against each other, dividing the groups into smaller segments of beliefs, so that there's two, like, for instance, conspiracy theorists like 12 years ago, for instance, had a whole bunch of conspiracies in their portfolio, and then other ones came along, and I believe they were all shield driven. Heavy mass objects. I'm not being terrible, to be honest with you. I'm not. So there was a whole bunch of these things like, oh, it's the end of the world again, and then yet again when that failed, and then, oh, the date was wrong, and now it's this date. And all of those people who believed in every one of those just became smaller and smaller segmented groups. The power of all of us believing in the portfolio, the list, then being carved off, making the whole group of really objective people trying to make sense of what's going on, of real things, started shrinking. And it was because they're peeling all these people off that they'd intentionally set ridiculous notions out there and had people buy into it, like flat Earth, for instance. I mean, the whole idea is preposterous, and yet you can believe it as much as you like. I'm not going to stop you. Don't care what you believe, to be honest. But once you do that, then you can be humiliated, and you can be brought down. You can be character assassinated, and that's one of the things that. What's the fellow's name, Meki, that had that documentary show and he's talked about the structure that you've already mentioned? Hancock?
Oh, Graham Hancock.
Yeah. So the character assassinations of Graham are just off the charts right now because they're refusing to believe the data, but rather than mention the data in their accusations against him, because that will only add weight to the data, they don't.
No,
they just pick it apart.
And then but their attacks against him personally.
Exactly, against him. Now, we all know that that's the cheapest form of trying to bring a good idea down.
Oh, yeah.
And is he our new Copernicus? For this? He's got a pretty big following, and his approach is reasonable.
he stays very calm no matter what
He
happens.
does. Yeah.
He's actually very well spoken.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually a journalist by trade. Okay, that's his background. He's a journalist. He worked for the BBC for a long time. And the first time I saw him, I think I told you the story, was when I was watching a travel documentary with Michael Palin, where Michael Palin ran into him in Africa, of all places. And it was just a chance meeting of Graham Hancock. And he was a BBC journalist at the time, right? Before he had started down the track of looking at these strange ancient things. But he stays calm. He's very well spoken. He's almost got like a preternatural calm. He's just unflappable, I want to say. But it reminds me of nothing more, Dave, than the attacks that were leveled against Robert Shaw, specifically, and John Anthony West by Mark Lehner and Zahi Hawass back in the 90s when they talked about the age of the Sphinx. And the geologists' conclusion that the weathering that had occurred on the rock out of which the Sphinx is made, never mind it's the Sphinx, it's just rock.
Yeah.
Okay, is in fact water erosion.
That's right. Water
rather
erosion.
than anything else. And yeah, it was. I mean, they asked back then. This is what they asked: where's the other piece of evidence that would point to a civilization that old? We're talking like the end of the Younger Dryas,
Yeah, that's right.
And back then there was no good answer. There wasn't a good answer because, well, you had the monolithic, but you can't date stone. That's the problem. You can't really date stone, right? That's always been the problem, or not accurately. But then, along comes Göbekli Tepe and the other sites that we've now found.
Yeah, good luck with that.
And that would have been a great answer back then. But the funny thing is this: Zahi Hawass, who was one of the people debating Robert Shaw because John Anthony wasn't allowed because he was not a credentialed academic, didn't even know about it.
No, that's right. I've seen that clip. It's great.
Right? I think Graham Hancock was talking to him.
Yeah.
And Zahi Hawass goes, "What is this Göbekli Tepe? What are you talking about?" I mean, it's literally a spit away from Egypt. You can spit to it if you want to. Okay, a good loogie will do it.
A ballistic spit, but nonetheless, it's not very far away. But doesn't it show the insular nature of these people who only work within their silo and ignore everything else?
He was the nationally appointed, in the past.
Yeah.
Zahi was the nationally appointed head of Egyptology in Egypt. That was his job. Every documentary in the 90s and noughties that you saw about Egypt, and then you dig anything with the Sphinx, anything with the pyramids, would have his face all over it. He was actually in Sydney recently, and I specifically didn't go to see him. So I'm a member of the National Museum, and I specifically didn't go to see him because I don't like it. So I'm specifically not going to your talk. But he didn't know about Göbekli Tepe. He didn't know. How could you not? I mean, this is the most monumental discovery in archaeology since Troy, since the discovery of Troy. Okay, it's like what? It's even more so because we just can't do anything with it. It's like what these I guess these archaeologists would love nothing more. They would love nothing more than the Göbekli Tepe to be buried again. Just bury it again.
That's right.
Just forget about it. Just bury it. There's no Göbekli Tepe. Don't look here. Nothing happened.
Can we make it go away, please?
Just come on, what?
I can imagine that fellow having dreams, nightmares at night, waking up in a pool of sweat, absolutely bolt upright in horror, and he's running naked out of Göbekli Tepe.
I know, right?
Because that I'm not prepared. That's what naked is. Like, I had this dream last night where I went to school and I was naked. It means you're just not prepared.
In my case,
dream psychologist. Yeah.
When I dream of myself naked, it's always a good dream. It's like, here I am, baby. Love me, world. Don't hate me. Don't judge me.
And the breeze just felt so good. Yes.
I've got an abnormally large ego, though, so that's all good.
So
it's true. It's been measured.
That's real funny. That's really. Oh, you talk about your. Oh, there you go. Yeah. So, um, so what's funny here is the anger at which that Egyptologist responded
Oh,
to the premise.
it was
It was,
visceral.
yeah. You feel it on this side of the screen, even though it's recorded.
Like, we'll take it back. I'm sorry. We'll take it all back. What?
But
I mean,
now there's more tepes, which is mountains, right? So there's more of those around. In fact, within 100 kilometers, there's more, and even more they're finding now. It looks like the entire area was littered with these. So
Well,
to
that's
have a
interesting, isn't it?
supporting culture large enough to support that kind of space, oh my goodness!
I know. All
Yeah.
of a sudden, you have to say, okay, well, and so these would have been the people that survived the end of the Younger Dryas.
That's right.
You see, they
Mhm.
probably were around for those cultures, like because they're working in large stones, like they all did for whatever reason, because they
That's
could.
right. They
That's the
could.
answer. Why do you do
Mhm.
it? Because I can.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. And they did, and then they kept doing that afterwards as well. And then, of course, with the intervening years, and look, we're talking thousands and thousands of years here.
And then why bury them, Mickey? That's the thing.
And we don't even remember any. Like this, the thing is this, though. There's not even a legend that says that the giants built it or anyone or the
No.
gods. Nothing. Zip.
That's
Zero.
right.
Zilch.
Mm-hmm.
Other areas, like if you go to South America or you go to Africa or the Pacific or wherever you go, when you find these massive structures, right, which almost beggar belief, it's usually this was built not by us. The native people say it was built by those before us, maybe the race of gods, race of giants, or some other really amazing race of people had built this. But
Historians say, "Oh, it was the Inca," and then the Inca, they go, "No, it wasn't us. It was the people before us. Yeah, we just kind of moved in. They were here."
Shut up,
right?
you! Shut up, you!
And
More blankets, quick!
More quick, get the blankets. They're onto us. And even New Zealand, the Maoris say that these structures were already here.
That's right. And the Maoris now, I think, acknowledge that they weren't the first people to settle New Zealand, in fact, because they were the longest. So a theory, one of the preferred theories was that New Zealand, apart from Antarctica, was the last place that was settled by human beings. The last place. It was settled by the Maoris.
700 years ago.
And that clearly isn't true. Now the Maoris are the first to say, well, no, clearly not. Because all this, look at stuff here. It says stuff here. We don't
They
do this
actually,
stuff.
before they went there, they knew that it was greenstone, or jade as you might know it, there, because that happens when you have two transverse faults which rub against each other, not subverse. They don't go beneath each other, right? And they knew that it was there already. They were already trading with the people that lived there prior to habitation. After the large tsunami wiped out most of the Pacific Islands.
That's right.
That's a thing. Look it up.
It is. And now we're losing them for good, it seems, right? Which brings me to one thing I wanted to quickly mention.
Time starts now.
What's happening in Dubai is not normal. Just want to say that just very quickly. What's happening in Dubai, not normal. It actually never happened. In fact, so much rain fell, I think in a few days. It was the annual rainfall, which we hear a lot about now, right, Dave? The annual rainfall delivered in a day.
Well, it was actually one day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it just whoosh.
And I love that shot of the airport with the plane taxiing in at least 5 foot of water.
Yeah, but see, this was the first I saw it. When they said Dubai, I thought, because I've been to Dubai, it's hot.
No, it's hot.
It's hot. It's not. I like hot. I like Singapore hot. Dubai isn't that. Dubai is 50 degrees, but it's hot.
That's right.
Okay, so not good. Not even I don't like it there.
I'd like to
people
see.
Died.
Yeah, that's right. Sadly, and I'd like to see the excavations for the line, to see how they were affected, but no footage yet.
You heard what happened there, right?
No.
They're scaling it down to 1 mile now. It's gonna be 1 mile. It's
Not
still
100
impressive,
miles.
don't get me wrong.
It's 1%. Anyway. Take
Yeah,
that.
I know, right? Oopsie. Hey, thank you so much for spending this hour with us. We went quick, I know, but we'll be back on Sunday with Shiny Side Out next week again with Plato's Cave. Don't go anywhere. Something will come up, and most of all, be safe.